Every day, I have the pleasure to do meaningful work, working with teams of people that are passionate about what they do towards a mission that they believe in. During the day, I work in an innovation team at Deloitte, with a team passionate about harnessing technology for the benefit of humankind. And during my evenings, I work for an organization I founded called Extraordinary Life, with an amazing young team focused on empowering people to live more meaningful working lives with our talks and with our sessions. But most people don't live like this. Studies show that only 13% of the population is engaged in their work. The remainder are disengaged, wake up every single morning with no genuine interest in the work that they do, on a packed metro, get to the office, and just watching the clock, waiting for the day to end. But we don't have to settle for this. The idea that work has to be hard and tough is just a brawl. According to a study by the Huffington Post, we will each spend around 13 years of our lives working. Yet why do so many of us imprison ourselves in jobs that we don't like? What if these 13 years are actually a meaningful part of our lives, where we're engaged in the work that we would do? We would essentially all live 13 years longer. Now, if right now someone invented a pill that would enable every single person in this room to extend their lives by 13 years, you would all be heading to the pharmacy right after this talk to go and get it, right? Now, some of you might be thinking, Tom, this is a conference about learning. Why are you talking about work? Well, with work being the ultimate outcome of education, for me, it makes no sense to talk about the future of learning without saying, what do you want for your working life? It would be like packing to go on a holiday without knowing your destination. So if I look out from a macroeconomic perspective, and we look at what's the actual meaning of education, I should say. Well, you see it on the screen behind me. As an economics graduate from Erasmus University, I was taught that the meaning of education is to give people the ability to contribute to the economy. Give them the knowledge and skills to keep economic growth high and unemployment low. From a governmental perspective, the actual job satisfaction of the individual worker is completely irrelevant. And maybe some of you think this actually differs when you look at educational institutions. Perhaps it does. But when I've spoken to career departments of leading universities, they tell me how they're actually measuring their success by what percentage of graduates actually found a job within 6 months, or how their department is assessed on, did all of our finance master students get a 3-month internship? A job, an internship, basically anything that prevents unemployment. Forget about meaningful work. But fortunately, our impact-focused generation, the millennial generation, will not settle for this. According to a study by LinkedIn, 86% of millennials would actually consider taking a pay cut for a job that is more aligned with their values and their impact. We want to self-actualize. We want to be energized in the work that we do. Now, I can see some of you, perhaps the older members of the audience, thinking, these millennials, they're so self-centered. Why are we talking about millennials again? Well, if we actually listen to the impact they want to have in their working world, and we would adapt the meaning of work based on what they see, I believe it would gain great benefits for our whole society, for every single one of us. A lot of studies show that if we use our talents in our work, we are therefore more engaged in what we do, more creative, and we have better physical health. Imagine the world that we could create. Societal innovations would flourish. Productivity would skyrocket. Parents who worked hard would return home to their families full of energy to actually spend time with their kids. Work would be a meaningful part of our lives, not just a separate part to it. Now, what I actually want to do is explain to you why this is not a utopian vision and how I've made my own working life meaningful with the teams that I work with in Deloitte and in Extraordinary Life. So my tips for you, these 3 things that I'm going to tell, how can you make your working life meaningful. Firstly, focus on creating meaningful working relationships. I'm not interested in all the small talk at the office coffee corner. I don't really care about what you did at the weekend, what your favorite color is, or how busy you are. I want to get into the deep talk. I want to feel connected to you. In my teams at Deloitte and Extraordinary Life, when we see each other, we greet each other, we give each other a hug because we're genuinely happy to see each other. We care about one another. And studies from actually a 75-year pioneering study from Harvard was recently published. And it showed that the most important factor for happiness in life is the quality of our relationships. And if work being such a long part of our lives, why not establish those relationships in our work? I mean, when you spend so much time at work, my boss and I actually joke that we spend more time with each other than we do with our wife or girlfriend. Funny story, actually. New Year's Eve this year, he called me up after a couple of drinks, about 1 a.m., and told me that he loved me. And I'm proud to say, I love him too. Meaningful work is meaningful relationships. Secondly, make your work more than just a job title. Focus on your impact. Many of you will go to these networking events or dinners with new people, these dinner parties, and the first question you always get after you say your name is, so, what do you do? And people say, oh, I'm a teacher. I'm an accountant. I'm a consultant, right? But that doesn't tell me anything. That's something I could just read on your CV, on your LinkedIn. I want to know who you are and what drives you. So when I go to dinner parties, instead of asking people, what do you do? I say, what drives you? And at first I get these weird looks like, what drives me? I drove here in a Ford Fiesta. But then eventually, you actually cut through to the deep talk, and you really understand what is it that people are doing their job for? What is their impact? So for myself, instead of saying that I'm a life coach or an innovation consultant, I say that I strive to empower people to live more meaningful working lives. And this works for other professions too. If you're a street cleaner, I help to create a more pleasant environment for people to live in. Or a bus driver, I help people to have the freedom of movement to actually explore the city. Meaningful work is meaningful impact. Thirdly, step off the deadline treadmill and stand still. Reflect on who you are and who you want to become. When I graduated in September 2016, I was quite unsure about what I wanted to do with my future. So I created this technique to actually reflect on myself, analyzing my own life like a consultant of myself. What I did was every night, 5 minutes before I went to bed, I would get out my nice journal and reflect on these 3 categories. I'd start with talent. What went well that day? What was I complimented on? And then happiness. What gave me energy that day? What made me smile? And then impact. What did I see or hear in the world today that I wanted to change? And the real magic of that exercise doesn't happen when you just do it once. It happens when you do it over time, because then you see patterns. You have a lot of data about yourself to look at. And when I did that, I saw that I was good at connecting with people. And what gave me energy was speaking on a stage like this. And the impact I wanted to make was to help people to actually live more meaningful working lives. And ultimately, that reflection is what led me to founding my own organization, Extraordinary Life, and it's what led me to being here with you here today. The key thing with this is I can't say to you what meaningful work is. Neither can your friends or family. Only you can say what meaningful work is for you. Meaningful work is a meaningful life. So assuming you have agreed with the things that I've said, and you believe that the purpose of education should change, what can we do? Well, right now, my organization and I are working with a leading university in the Netherlands to actually embed this philosophy into their curriculums, creating a 3-year program that understands that the purpose of education is actually to prepare people to live meaningful working lives, focusing on discovery. Imagine starting your university time with actually questions like, what is it that you want to achieve in the next 3 years? What is success for you? What is ambition for you? Actually having this regular reflection. Imagine having passion projects that you did, experimenting with domains that excite you, rather than just waiting until you finally finished your medical degree or your degree as an accountant or whatever it is. Actually experiment in that domain in the first year of university. So then you don't waste all this time studying something that you finally graduate and realize that you didn't want to be that trashy consultant, or didn't want to be that doctor, or didn't want to be that teacher. And my other advice for you, for all the people in this room who are educators, I plead to you, build in reflection, build in experimentation into your curriculums. Furthermore, building peer coaching. Have the students coach one another so that you can actually do coaching in a scalable way. That would be my advice. And for the business leaders in this room, what can you do based on this? Primarily, understand that what happens at the office affects that person's life, for both good or bad. There is no separation. It's a work-life integration. At Deloitte right now, my team and I are working on a program that understands that philosophy, actually working to increase happiness even further and increase creativity through actually treating people as individuals that have needs that go beyond a mere employer-employee relationship. Secondly, recruit people based on their passion. This generation, they want to make an impact. Only hire those whose impact you can actually fulfill. When I was recruiting for my Extraordinary Life team, and still this goes on now, I first find out from these people what is it they actually want to impact? What is the change they want to see in the world? And if that matches up with what I want to impact and what our organization wants to impact, then we actually co-create the role together, ensuring that they're actually energized by the work that they're doing and that they actually really want to make the difference that they believe in. And that's really the key to recruitment, in my opinion. If you recruit people that are passionate about the work that they do, they're going to always go the extra mile. And they're going to unleash their creativity at your company to go way beyond what you could possibly imagine. So to summarize, if you want to live a more meaningful working life, build incredible working relationships, focus on your impact more than just your title, and integrate your life with your work. I'd like to close this talk by saying that in the world we live in today, there are so many complex challenges. Climate change, wealth inequality, food security, just to name a few. I believe that if we empower people that actually care about these challenges to devote their working lives to solving them, then we wouldn't just have a more meaningful working world, but we would actually save our species. Thank you.